This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, welcome everyone. Bruchim Habayim. Welcome to the Kollel Igra de Pirka on this fine Labor Day in New York City. I hope everyone is laboring away. Obviously, today is a day of labor. Amelos b'Torah. Adam la'amal yulad, the Gemara says. Amal, the Marsha says, is Rashi Tevos, li'amal, lo'moid, almanas, l'lamed. Okay, we come, this week's Parsha is Parshas Nitzavim. Parshas Nitzavim is always a Parsha we read right before Rosh Hashanah. Atem Nitzavim hayom kolachem lefnei Hashem Elokeichem. You stand, all of you, today before Hashem your God. And the Zohar teaches us the word hayom is always a reference to Rosh Hashanah. And therefore we read this Parsha right before Rosh Hashanah, indicating that on Rosh Hashanah it's Atem Nitzavim hayom kolchem lefnei Hashem Elokeichem. And amazingly in Parshas Nitzavim we encounter a very unique mitzvah, where the Torah says, Ki ha-mitzvah hazois, because this mitzvah, Asher anoichi mitzavacha hayom, that I command you today, lo nifleisi mimecha, it's not hidden from you. V'lo yirechaika hi, it is not far. Lo b'shamayim hi, it is not in the heaven, lemar, that you would say, Mi yahle lanu hashamayim, who will bring us up to the heaven? V'yikacheha lanu, and take it for us. V'yashmiyenu oisav na'asena. V'lohi me'ever layamhu. He, it is not overseas. Leimar, mi yavar lanu, elever hayam, who will cross the seas? V'yikachel lanu. V'yashmiyenu oisav na'asena. Ki karoi ve'lecha hadavar ma'oid. Because the matter is very close. Beficha, it's in your mouth. Uvilvavcha, and it's in your heart. La'asoisoi, to do it. So the Torah is speaking about a mitzvah, ki ha-mitzvah hazois. And it's saying that this mitzvah, you may think it's overseas. You may think it's in the heaven. But it's not. Where is it? In fact, it's very close. It's not close, Rabbi say. This mitzvah is not close, it's very close. How close is very close? It's in your mouth. It's in your heart to do it. What is this mitzvah? That's the $1 million question. It is a mitzvah that you would have thought is out of reach, because there's no mitzvah in the Torah where the Torah says, this mitzvah, it's not on the moon, it's not on Mars. By the way, Matzoi Shabbos, I went outside at about 11:45, and I looked up to the heavens, and I looked at the moon, and lo and behold, I could not believe my eyes. There was a very bright star right next to the moon. I never saw anything like it in my life. An extremely bright star. And then I said, what? It's not even a bright star, it's a red star. Mars and the moon came together September 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th in a way that I don't know if it's been, but it was quite remarkable, where you could see Mars and the moon. So there's no mitzvah.
Also, and when somebody who knows astronomy or claims to know astronomy told me it was Jupiter, and next to it.
No, he's wrong. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It was Mars. But anyway, I looked it up. But anyway, there's no mitzvah in the Torah where it says that this mitzvah, don't think it's over the moon, don't think it's out of space, don't think it's... No, it's not true. It's very close to you. So that means you would have thought it's very far, and the Torah is saying it's in fact very close. So what is this mitzvah talking about? So Rambam says as follows. Rambam says, Ki ha-mitzvah azois al kol ha-Torah kula. It's referring to the whole Torah. The hanocha, in what is correct, Ki al kol ha-Torah yeyomar ki kol ha-mitzvah shonochim tzav chayim. The Rambam says it's not going on the whole Torah, because referring to the whole Torah it says kol ha-mitzvah. But ha-mitzvah hazois al ha-tshuva ha-nizkeres. The mitzvah hazois is referring to the above mentioned mitzvah, because in Pasuk Aleph the Pasuk says, Ki v'hashevoisa el levavecha v'shavta ad Hashem lekecha. Mitzvah Sheyitzave oisanu la'asos kein. It's a mitzvah that he commanded us to do this. Now it's interesting. The Ramban is learning that ki ha-mitzvah hazois is referring to the mitzvah of Teshuva. Where did we ever identify the mitzvah of Teshuva? In the beginning of that Parsha, it says, V'hashevoisa el vavecha, v'shavta. So it's a mitzvah that he's commanding us to do. Now, the Torah did not use an outright command, but interestingly, the language of the pasuk is sort of somewhat of a in-between language. It implies you should, and it implies you will. V'hatam, the reason is lemar, kim yeh nidachacha b'ksei hashamayim. Because if you're scattered to the end of the heavens, v'ata b'yado amim, and you are in the hands of the nations, tuchal lashuv el Hashem, you could return to God. V'lasois kachal asher anoichi mitzavcha hayom, and do whatever I command you today. Ki ein hadavar nifla v'rachok mimcha, because this matter is not concealed and far. Aval koroi ve'lecha ma'od, it's very close. La'asoisai, to do it b'chaleisa v'chal makom. So according to Rambam, the Torah is referring to the mitzvah of Teshuva, and you would have thought Teshuva is difficult, and the Torah is saying no, Teshuva is very easy. All it is in your mouth and in your heart. In fact, the Baal HaTurim says, why is Teshuva referred to as ha-mitzvah hazois? Why is Teshuva compared to all the mitzvahs? Loimar shkula hi ha-Teshuva keneged kol ha-mitzvahs kulam. Teshuva is the equivalency of all the mitzvahs. So let's have the following analysis. What's very interesting is that the Rambam in Hilchos Teshuva identifies 4 ingredients of Teshuva. And the Rambam says, Umahi ha-Teshuva. I'm sorry, it's not so easy to read. Number 1, Hu sheyazov ha-choitei chetoi. The sinner should forsake the sin. V'yisirenu mimachshavtoi. And remove it from his thoughts. V'yigmar b'liboi shelo ya'aseh oid. Furthermore, he should commit never to do it again. Shenemar yazov rasha darkoi v'yishaven machshavoisa. V'chein yisnachem al sha'avar. One should likewise regret the past. Shenemar ki acharei shuvi nichamti. After I repented, I regretted. V'acharei hivadi. And after I became known, safakti al yorech. V'yoed olav yoidea talumais. And the one who can testify about secrets should be able to testify. Shelo yashav l'zeh achet la'olam. V'tzarach lehisvadois b'svasav. You need to confess with your lips, v'loimer, and to say, in yanos elu shegmar b'libai, you need to confess and articulate with your mouth all of the commitments that you made. Now, Marv Rabbi say, Teshuva consists of 4 ingredients, which means, comes Yom Naram, and a person is inspired, and he manages to keep up for the drasha, and he hears very inspiring words, and he says, this year, I'm going to open up my checkbook, and I'm going to write a $10,000 check for the Kol Nidre appeal. What has he accomplished in the realm of Teshuva? Nothing. Nothing. He has not done Teshuva. Not only has he not done Teshuva 90%, he has not done Teshuva 70%, he has not done Teshuva 10%, and he has not done Teshuva 1%. Tzedakah is a wonderful mitzvah. It's a zechus, perhaps, to ward off a bad decree, but it's not Teshuva. It's a very easy way for the Yetzer Hara to make a person feel like he had a successful high holiday season. And one thing I guarantee you, the shul will take your money happily. But have you accomplished anything in the realm of Teshuva? No. Number 1, you need to stop sinning. Number 2, you need to commit not to sin again. Number 3, you need to regret your sin. And number 4, you need to confess and articulate your commitments. Without that, you didn't do Teshuva. You could sing your heart out during an Asana Toikef. You could clap yourself until you're sore saying Vidoi. You could bow down during Aleinu and get your pants dirty from top to bottom. That's very nice. It's all fine and wonderful. It doesn't matter. It's not tshuva. Tshuva is, you got to stop sinning, you have to regret, you have to commit, and you have to confess. And therefore, the $1 million question is, how can the Torah say that it is a easy mitzvah? Does anybody find it easy to change? It is very difficult to change. Who changes? Most people are still dealing with the habits and routines that they dealt with 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. It's not easy to change. Even one mitzvah. Now, Marv Rabbi, every mitzvah stands on its own. Meaning, even if a person doesn't do tshuva for eating treif, they could do tshuva for Chilul Shabbos. And even if a person doesn't do tshuva for Geneva, they could do tshuva for speaking by davening. One thing has nothing to do with the other. And therefore one has to deal with every avera separately. But one thing, l'chayra, nobody would ever say, is if I would stop 1,000 people on the street and say, which mitzvah in the Torah is the easiest mitzvah, I guarantee you nobody would say it's tshuva. If I would stop 1,000 people on the street, what's the hardest mitzvah in the Torah? Maybe over 900 of them would say it's doing tshuva. I mean, if someone is in a bad habit, it's very hard to change. So how could the Torah say it's not in the heavens? It seems to be. How could the Torah say it's not overseas? It does seem to be there. Especially, Marv Rabbi, the two hardest parts of tshuva are, number one, azivas hachet, stopping to sin. Stopping to sin is the hardest part of tshuva. I mean, if somebody is in the habit of doing an avera, whether it's insulting people, whether it's arrogance, whether it's anger, whether it's whatever it might be, someone is in a habit, it's hard to kick the habit. The same way people don't find it easy to stop smoking, it's not easy to change one's behavior. And therefore, how could the Torah say tshuva is easy? Furthermore, another important part of tshuva is regret. Now, we stand there on Yom Kippur, but do we feel real remorse? Real remorse is when you let your wallet out of sight and you turn around and it's not there anymore and you say, how could I have been so stupid not to be vigilant and guard my money? Then for weeks and weeks you're kicking yourself. How could I do something so foolish? Do we feel that same type of regret on Yom Kippur? If you're an honest person, you would probably say no. We don't. Do we feel, hey, how could I have let myself get angry? What does a person feel more regret about? Losing $1,000 or doing an avera? Losing $100 or doing an avera? So we have a hard time feeling regret. We have a hard time stopping to sin. And yet, if you don't regret and stop sinning, you cannot do tshuva. So how could the Torah say tshuva is easy? Asks Rav Itzeleh Peterburgh. Rav Itzeleh Peterburgh was born Rosh Chodesh Adar, Tov Kuf Tzadi Zayin, in the year 1837. And he was nifter in 1907. He was the primary disciple, certainly one of the three primary disciples of Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, and together with the author of Kelm and Rav Aftali Amsterdam. And the Rabbi Yisrael Salanter would praise his three Talmidim, and the praise that he gave Rabbi Itzeleh Peterburgh is he called Rabbi Itzeleh the Lamdin. Lamdin meaning he was a very proficient and preeminent Torah scholar in halacha and in learning. He wrote Shas Teshuvas pre-Yitzchak, but Rabbi Yitzchak Itzeleh Peterburgh, Rabbi Yitzchak Blazer, was the main disseminator of the Musar of Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. And he writes in his classic work, Koich Le'ar, he says that in the Sefer Reishis Chachma, Perek Aleph, he brings the words of the Ramban, that Ki HaMitzvah Hazois over here refers to tshuva, and he says, according to the Ramban, in my opinion, this fits very well into the pasuk. Ki karoi veilecha hadavar ma'od beficha. Beficha is vidoi. Uvilvavcha and kabbalah ala asid. So this fits very well into the pasuk. Ki karoi veilecha hadavar ma'od. Beficha is vidoi. Uvilvavcha is kabbalah ala asid. Now, the Rav Itzeleh Peterburgh is sort of bothered that we know the main ingredients of tshuva is azivas hachet and kabbalah ala asid, charata and vidoy. So why would the pasuk only say beficha vidoy uvilvavcha kabbalah ala asid? What about azivas hachet and charata? And Rav Itzeleh Peterburgh says you have to say charata is included in vidoy, beficha, because someone who confesses, it is an offshoot of regret. And azivas hachet is included in uvilvavcha, because what causes kabbalah asid is azivas hachet. But it is most interesting. Why would the Torah explicitly refer to vidoy, beficha, and kabbalah ala asid, uvilvavcha, and so to speak omit what is the more important ingredients in a way, and that is charata and azivas hachet? But furthermore, the Parsha pshat in the pasuk that the matter is very close. Beficha uvilvavcha la'asoisai. That implies tshuva is very easy because it's only in your mouth. It's only in your heart. But everybody knows that tshuva is very hard because every year comes Yom Kippur, we're doing tshuva for the same things we did tshuva for last year and the year before and the year before, and we have not really successfully changed those things that needed correction for years and years. However, says Rav Itzeleh Peterburgh, if we pay careful attention to the language of the pasuk really is only referring to vidoy and kabbalah ala asid, and the Torah is not really even discussing charata and azivas hachet. And now the question is, Rabbi Isai, if you put aside charata and you put aside azivas hachet, which are the hard parts of tshuva, and now you're left with kabbalah ala asid and vidoy, those are the easy parts of tshuva. If you could ignore for a moment azivas hachet and charata, then tshuva is taka very easy. You ready? Watch this. Chatasi avisi pashati lefanecha. Wow. And I could even sing a nice song. Right? Shamnu baganu gozalnu libarnu doifi. Right? It's like a little jingle over there. So saying vidoy is not really that difficult. And the truth is, once you've stopped sinning, then it's not really that difficult to accept upon yourself not to do it again. So in a sense, yes, the whole package of tshuva is very, very hard, but the ingredients that the pasuk are referring to explicitly, namely kabbalah ala asid and vidoy, are actually very, very easy. But now the question is, why does the Torah sort of ignore the hard parts of tshuva and say, yeah, it's very, very easy? That's like saying it's very easy to win a gold medal in the Olympics, right? Ignoring the part of actually swimming 50 laps, but once you're within a millimeter of the end, it's very, very easy to touch the wall. Shkoyach. But try getting there and beating all the other swimmers. So Rav Itzeleh Peterburgh offers a remarkable approach, and for a moment I want to take you to the Rambam. This is an incredible Rambam. The Rambam says, there's a Rambam, Hilchos Teshuva, Perek Aleph, Halacha Aleph, Kol HaMitzvah Shebetorah. All the mitzvahs in the Torah, Bein Asa, Bein Loi Asa, Bein Loi Saseh, whether an Aseh or Loi Saseh, Im Avar Adam Malachas Mehem, Bein Bezoda, Bein Beshkaga, whether you violate them, the Mezid or B'Shoigeg. Kishe Yaset Tshuva, when you do Tshuva, v'yashav mechetoi, and you repent, chayiv lehizvadois, you need to say vidoi. This is the most difficult Rambam. All the mitzvahs in the Torah, whether an aseh, whether a lois aseh, when you do tshuva, you have to say vidoi. What do you mean, when I do tshuva? Why doesn't the Rambam say, I have to do tshuva? The Rambam says, when I do tshuva, you have to say vidoi. What do you mean, when I do tshuva, you have to say vidoi? The Rambam is mashma, you don't have to do tshuva. You hear this, Rabbi Isai? So you're going to go home, your wife's going to say, what did you learn today? He said, the rabbi taught that the Rambam says you don't have to do tshuva. She's going to say, get out of that shiur, go to a different shiur, go to Agar de Pirka in Muncie or something. But that's what can I do, Rabbi Isai? That's what the Rambam says. The Rambam holds you don't have to do tshuva. You hear that? The Rambam's opinion is, if you do tshuva, you have to say vidoi. But you can say there's a chiyuv to do tshuva. And Rav Olbaum, in his commentary to the Rambam Hilchos Tshuva, U'lechora mashma midivrei harambam she'etzem ha'tshuva eino mitzvah sasei ela k'sheyasa tshuva v'yashav mechetoi chayiv lesvadois. And that is because vidoi is a mitzvah sasei, but not tshuva. And the Minchas Chinuch agrees that that's pshat in the Rambam. That tshuva is not a mitzvah, but if you do it, you have a mitzvah to say vidoi. But if you don't do tshuva, you won't be punished for not doing tshuva. You'll just be punished for the avera you did. Now, the Ramban in Parshas Nitzavim learns that tshuva is a mitzvah, as we just learned. Ki ha-mitzvah hazois is a mitzvah of tshuva. But the Rambam does not hold tshuva is a mitzvah. You hear that? Boaz, you hear that pshat? You look like you're enjoying it. The Rambam holds tshuva is not a mitzvah. If you do it, you better say vidoi, but you don't have to do it. The Ramban learns you have to do it. The Rambam says if you do it, say vidoi, you don't have to do it. So what we're going to try to explain today is what could be pshat in the Rambam. Why would the Rambam hold that there's no mitzvah of tshuva? You don't have to do tshuva. Rav Betzalel Zolti in the Mishnah Yaivitz, Rav Betzalel Zolti writes in his commentary, the Rambam Arachaim Siman Dalid, that the Rambam in fact holds there's no mitzvah of tshuva, and that is because the Rambam reads that all the prophets prophesy that we have to do tshuva, and the Jewish people will not be redeemed if we don't do tshuva, and the Nevi'im promise and vouchsafe that Klal Yisrael will do tshuva in the end of days, and then they'll be redeemed. Like it says, V'hayo ki yavayu lecha kol dvarim v'shavta ad Hashem loikecha. So the Rambam learns that it's not a mitzvah, but it's a promise. The Rambam learns tshuva is not a command. It is a promise. V'shavta, you will do tshuva. And since you will do tshuva, one of the basic tenets of mitzvahs is that God does not reckon something to be a mitzvah if you don't have free choice whether to do it or not. And since tshuva may not be in our capacity because God is saying, I will make sure that the Jewish people do tshuva, the Rambam learns it's not a mitzvah, but more of Rabbi Isai, we are going to offer a new approach to it for the Rambam. Why the Rambam learns there is no mitzvah in the Torah to do tshuva. So next time somebody says to you, they're a Baal tshuva, you say, you're a Baal what? What's tshuva? So what do you mean tshuva? Tshuva is something you have to do. You can say, no, you don't have to do tshuva. There's no mitzvah in the Torah. So he'll say he holds like the Ramban. But you're going to tell him, the Rambam holds, there's no mitzvah of tshuva. See, I see you're all smiling. He said, I can't believe it. Not only is davening going to be shorter this year, because in my shul they're going to cut out some of the singing, but now I just heard a shiur, you don't even have to do tshuva. This is going to be the best Yomim Naram season ever. Well, Marv Rabbi Isai, don't get too excited yet. Okay. What is the pshat in the Rambam? Why would tshuva not be a mitzvah? Comes the Rambam, comes the Itzeleh Peterburgh, and he says, again, reviewing the four components of tshuva, and they are azivas hachet, stopping to sin. So let's say you are somebody, you come into shul, and before you put on your talis and tefillin, you take out your phone, and you check it out. You know, who called me today? Let me check out my my texts, my WhatsApps, my emails. You can't do that. You can't be busy on a phone in a shul. It's the house of God. It's a place of prayer. You're not even allowed to look at your phone if you have tefillin on. You're not allowed to distract your mind from your tefillin. You're not allowed to be mesiach das from your tefillin. So, on Yom Kippur, so you're going to say, Oshamnu, Baganu, Gazalnu. Say, Rabbi Yid, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're saying, I'm saying vidoy for bringing my phone into shul. Do you plan on doing it tomorrow? Yeah. So what are you doing? That's not tshuva. Tshuva is, you don't bring it into the shul. So if that's the case, you need to do aziva sachet, but along with aziva sachet is you have to accept upon, in other words, the first thing is you stop. You stop, you leave it in the car. But we ask you, Rabbi Yid, are you going to do it again? You say, why are you asking me if I can do it again? I don't do it anymore. Yeah, but are you going to do it again? Why are you asking me that? It's in my car now. Why are you asking if I can do it again? Rabbi Yid, will you do it again in 6 months? Okay, fine. You want me to say I won't do it again in 6 months? I won't ever bring the phone into shul. And you say to the guy, I'm not doing it anyway. Why do you need me to say I'll never do it again? We say, Rabbi Yid, you want to do tshuva? It's not enough to stop. You need to commit not to do it again. And you say, come on, that's just semantics. Once I've stopped, it sort of goes without saying, I'll never do it again. But this is what we're required to do. It's not enough to stop. You need to commit not to do it. Now, once you've stopped, it is actually easy to commit not to do it again. Furthermore, regret. Regret is very much connected to vidoy. Because even if a person just regrets, nevertheless, it's not enough just to feel remorse and feel regret for what one did. One has to actually say to God, look, Ribbon Hashem, I sinned against you. So let's say we say to a Jew, Rabbi Yid, how's your Limud HaTorah? Yeah, Limud HaTorah. The truth is, I waste a little bit too much time. You know what? I have more time in the day that I can make use of. I feel bad about it. Say, very good. You're on the path to tshuva. We say, but Rabbi Yid, we need you to do something else. We need you to say to the Ribbon Shalom that you're guilty, that you could have done better. Say, what do I need to say it? I feel bad, and the Ribbon Shalom knows what's in my heart. Just say it. So he says, fine, I'll say it. Once you have regret, it's a piece of cake to say vida. It's not really a big deal. So the truth is, there are two hard parts of tshuva, and there are two easy parts of tshuva. The hard parts are, stop sinning. Once you've stopped, it's easy to commit not to do it again. The hard part is, feel regret. Once you feel regret, it's easy to confess. Now, and here is where Rabbi Itzeleh has a brilliant idea. Rabbi Itzeleh says, let me ask you a question. Let's say God would never have given the mitzvah of tshuva. Let's say if a person did an avera, he ate chazer, he ate basar b'chalav, he ate basar oif and chalav. Let's say a person spoke by chazar hashatz. Let's say there was no such thing as tshuva, and you're stuck, and you have this avera on your record, and there's no way to remove it. Question: would you be allowed to do it again? Let's say if a person ate a cheeseburger, there's no way to get it off your record. It's on your record forever. It doesn't matter. You could go to you could go to driver's class, and you could try to get your points. No, let's say you're stuck with this stain on your record. Would you be allowed to eat another cheeseburger? And the answer is, of course not. Because the same Torah that said, don't eat a cheeseburger, continues to say, don't eat a cheeseburger. So the fact that you did it once doesn't allow you to do it again. So even if there was never a mitzvah of tshuva, you would have to stop sinning. Because if you would sin again, you would get punished more. In other words, the reason we have to do azivas hachet has nothing to do with tshuva. Because even if there was not a concept of tshuva, you would still have to stop sinning. Because Ribbon Shalom said, so just because you violated it once, you could violate it again. Azivas hachet has absolutely nothing to do with tshuva. Of course you have to stop sinning. Let's say there was no gift of tshuva. You have to stop sinning so you don't do the Avera again. Tshuva is so easy. Because the hard parts of tshuva are not associated with tshuva. You can't consider them difficult ingredients in the path of tshuva. Because they're not even affiliated with tshuva. What is tshuva? Tshuva is a way to clean your sins. But we would have to stop sinning even if we couldn't clean our sins. We would have to forsake our bad ways even if we couldn't cleanse ourselves. We know there's a concept. For every sin a person does, there's oynesh, there's oinshim. Al kol chet va'avon ye onesh ha'adam. For every sin of a person's punished. What kind of punishment? Va'oinesh ra v'amar ma'oid nale al kol yisurei teva. You know, this is a concept that nobody likes to talk about. But the Yom Adin is coming. We believe in reward and punishment. That in the next world, for every Avera, there is an Oynesh, which is Rav Amar, worse than all the afflictions of this world. Now what if a person sins endlessly, and every day you commit thousands of Averas? For each and every Avera, one has to pay the price. You know the story with the Gra, with a Rasha Marisa. It was a wicked person who violated the most severe Avera. And the man was about to eat an apple. And the Gra says to this Noyef Roiseach Dana, don't forget to make a bracha. And the guy looked at him. Don't forget to make a bracha? Of what significance is my yes or no bracha? And the Gra says, no. Doesn't matter what kind of terrible things you've done. You'll pay for this also. There's nothing trivial. I have a question. Rebbe Shem is not mevater even one chet. I remember Rabbi Victor Miller used to say over that when Rabbi Isaac Sher came to America, so in America there were wealthy people. So in Slobodka, Rabbi Isaac Sher would speak about Gadlus Ha'adam. But in America he would speak to Balabatim about Gehenna. Now Rabbi Miller would say, money he didn't get. But he picked up a few Talmidim to bring back to Slobodka. One of them was Rabbi Victor Miller. But, in our generation, you can't even talk about it. Who are you going to tell? A teenager? No, they don't have the emotional wherewithal even to hear about it. But it doesn't mean this is not a basic tenet of Judaism. Ani mavin be'amunah shalema she'abar yisrael shema gives reward to those who does mitzvah and punishes those who do avera. Let's say there would be no such thing as tshuva, and the person he was mavatal Torah one day. Does that mean he could be mavatal Torah on day 2? He'll be punished for day 2. So even if there was no such thing as removing previous sin, you would still have to stop sinning so you don't incur further punishment. So you can't say tshuva is hard. It's so hard to stop sinning. Stopping to sin has nothing to do with tshuva. What does stopping to sin have to do with tshuva? You gotta stop sinning because the Torah says don't do it. And even if you did it once, the Torah still says don't do it again. It has nothing to do with tshuva. What does azivas hachet have to do with tshuva? The Torah says, Lo selech rachil be'amecha. So just because you spoke Lashon Hara for an hour, you still cannot violate Lo selech rachil be'amecha, and you have to be oizev chetoi. What about charata? Charata has nothing to do with tshuva. Rabbi Yehuda writes, charata comes from a recognition and realization that you did something foolish. Excuse the expression. I'm using it just to clarify the point. Charata is a recognition that you did something S-T-U-P-I-D. I don't even like to say it, but that's what charata is. You did something even more than foolish. It was so not smart. Was it worth it? Oh, let me buy myself a can of soda. What should I do with my wallet? Well, I'm too lazy to put it in my pocket. Let me just put it down on the floor. I'm sure nothing will happen. And you buy yourself a Coke and you turn around, your wallet is gone. You say to yourself, what kind of shaita am I? Why would I do that? Just because I was a little bit lazy, I wouldn't guard my wallet? Somebody comes to you to have a conversation. So you know what he's going to talk about. So get out of it. Run away. Or talk about something else. What do you gain out of discussing Pliny? Why do you... And when you... charata is coming to the realization that what you did was foolish. Was dumb. It wasn't worth it. What is charata? Rabbi Yehuda says, Mel, sisi. What did I do? Why wasn't I worried about the punishment? I mean, if a person is a mammon, we believe there's oynesh for an avera. And oynesh is worse than losing $1,000. So was it worth losing $1,000 to do X, Y, and Z? Of course not. How could I have been so foolish? Says the Rabbi Itzeleh Peterburgh, what does charata have to do with tshuva? Let's say there was no such thing as tshuva. Let's say if a person did an avera, it was on their record forever, like the Umayis Ha'olam. They can't wipe out a sin. They shouldn't have regret for what they did. They shouldn't realize what they did was foolish. It is not a recognition that's dependent on cleansing your sin. It's a recognition of realizing that what you did was empty. So the truth is, stopping to sin is very hard, but has nothing to do with tshuva. Regret is very hard, but it's got nothing to do with tshuva. Tshuva means those things we need to do to remove the sin. And you know what they are? That once you stop bringing your phone into shul, you need to accept, I'll never bring it into shul again. That's so easy. If anyway you're leaving it in the car, so why don't you just accept not to do it again? You're not doing it anyway. Once you've accepted, okay, I'm not going to discuss people with yentas. Once you've accepted to take certain precautions that you're not going to do, it's very easy to in other words, once you've stopped sinning, so it's very easy to accept. Once you really regret what you did, confession is a piece of cake. And therefore the Torah tells you, this mitzvah that I'm giving you, that until this mitzvah was given, when you did an avera, was on your record permanent. And anyway you would have to stop the avera. And anyway you would have to regret. But now all you need to do to get it off the record is just accept not to do it again. And say with your mouth what you did. Hikaroi eilecha hadavar me'oid. It is so easy. It is so easy. What do you mean it's easy? It's not easy to stop sinning. That's true. But you have to stop sinning. And once you do it, it is so easy to accept not to do it again. It's not easy to have regret. It's not. But you need to regret what you did, whether there's tshuva or not. And once you do regret, vidoy is very easy. You know how easy tshuva is? Beficha vidoy. Uvelvavcha kabbalah al asir. But what about the hard parts? They're hard, but they're not part of tshuva. They're not misyaches to tshuva. Says Rav Itzeleh, when we call anizkar le'el, based on the above, ki etzem atshuva davar kal ma'od. The actual tshuva is very easy. Ki hinei shnei ikrei atshuva shal azivas achiv acharata. the two main principles of tshuva, forsaking your sin, and we get im amnam kiu davar kasha, even though they're very difficult, to conquer the yetzer and to leave your sin. Ulam haloi zeh eino inyan davim kach. They're not really relevant to tshuva. Because even if there would have been no gift of tshuva, then Hashem should be moichel and forgive l'shavei pesha. Even if an aveira is a permanent record, you still would have to stop. You know why? So you don't get more punishment. So you can't say tshuva is hard because of aziva. You got to do aziva anyway. You can't say tshuva is hard because of charata, because even without tshuva, if you recognize what the repercussions are, you would regret it. But the two added dimensions of tshuva, which are germane to tshuva, namely vidui and kabbalah, and they come as a special way to cleanse your sin. And if you don't do them, God will not cleanse. But they're so easy, because once anyway I have to stop sinning, so it's easy to accept not to do it again. Once anyway I have to regret, it's easy to be makabel upon myself. It's easy to say vidui. However, that which Hashem requests of the sinner, rak beglal midas tshuva, only because the action of tshuva, dahainu vidu dvar makabal belev, hu beemes davar kal ma'oid, is very, very easy. Now it's interesting. Rabbi Itzeleh implies that, and the Rambam implies, vidui is really connected not only to charata, but to kabbalah ala asir. If you look in the Rambam says, but tzarich lehisvados b'sos v'loymar in yonois elu shegamar beliba. You need to articulate your kabbalos, and that's going to be very important as we're about to see. So let's read Rabbi Itzeleh's upshot here. Says Rabbi Itzeleh Peterburgh, Ulam es asher soif im aziva sachet. If coupled with aziva sachet, yuchal lahasa gam machilo sirchel chatav lesnar min avanoisav limchoy sesim ka'anan. If in the end anyway I need to stop sinning, and in order to achieve mechila, which is a gift, zeu metzia shayimsa oitzam shalrav, which is a finding that is a treasure of great spoils. All God asks of me is even without it. So the truth is, if you think about it, tshuva is such a matnas chinam. Why? Because anyway we have to stop sinning. Anyway we have to regret. All we have to do to get the erasing of sin, the slicha mechila v'chapara, is kabbalah ala asid and vidui, which is a piece of cake. So think about what the Rebbeinu Shalom did for us. He says, my entire kinder, look, I understand it's hard to stop sinning, but you guys got to do it anyway. I understand it's hard to regret, but you have to do it anyway. So I'm going to give you a little a gift here. Since you have to do it anyway, if you just add a little bit to your aziva, namely kabbalah al asr, you add a little bit to your charata, namely vidui, then I'm going to cleanse your sin. You say, Rebbeinu Shalom, why would you cleanse our sin? Anyway, we have to stop sinning. Rebbeinu Shalom says, I'm just asking you to do a little tiny thing. Ki karoiv elecha hadavar me'oid. Just say vidui, just kabbalah, and then through what you had to do anyway, you could get off your avera. Mavra Aboisai, we could suggest a amazing interpretation of the Rambam. The Rambam holds tshuva is not a mitzvah. Just if you do tshuva, you say vidoy. And the question is, how could tshuva not be a mitzvah? And I believe, according to Rav Itzeleh, it's so obvious why tshuva is not a mitzvah. You know why tshuva is not a mitzvah? Because the mitzvah was already a mitzvah. The Torah says, "Umikdashai tiro." So anyway, you can't talk during davening. You can't bring the phone in. So you say, "Oh, do I have to do tshuva? Why would I need a mitzvah of tshuva? There's still a mitzvah of umikdashai tiro." You can't talk, you can't bring in the phone. What does tshuva got to do with it? You couldn't do it originally. You couldn't do it to begin with. I don't need another mitzvah of tshuva. The original mitzvah, I have a question. The Torah says, don't speak Lashon Hara. So the guy spoke Lashon Hara. Now he wants to know, do I have to do tshuva? You say, Rabbi Yid, you need to stop sinning, because if you speak Lashon Hara again, you're going to violate again. So you don't need a mitzvah of tshuva. Why would tshuva be a mitzvah? I can't do it again because the Torah says not to do it. So therefore the Rambam says, when you do tshuva, which you know why you have to do it, not because there's a mitzvah of tshuva, because the Torah said don't do it the first time. So you certainly can't do it the second time. Elamai, if I want to repair what I did, I say vidoy. So now the question is, why does the Rambam only say vidoy? According to what we're saying, the Rambam should say kishayaseh tshuva yizvade v'yikabel al atzmoi, not to do it again. Why wouldn't the Rambam say both? So look in this amazing Meshech Chachma. The Meshech Chachma says, "V'nez boinein the shem tshuva k'fi mashamayro shma." Think about the fact that the name tshuva, based on what its name indicates, Eich nechshev, the mitzvah. How could you consider it a mitzvah? Sheyashav mikisla v'layach ta'oiv, that you should repent from your sliding and not sin again. Haloi b'loya mitzvah, even without a mitzvah. Mitzvah v'oimed levli lavar al mitzvah Hashem Yisbarach. Let's say there's no mitzvah of tshuva. You still have to keep the mitzvahs in the Torah. Just because I repeatedly violated a mitzvah, I could do it again. The Meshech Chachma says. 1 second, let me change the batteries. The Meshech Chachma says, you know why I'm now to do the Aveira again? Because the Torah said don't do it the first time. Hinei ha'azhara harishayna, the first warning, hamonata mechote taram shechata, that stopped us, that was trying to restrain us from sinning before we sinned, hi moinata mechata gam achrei shechata, is still stopping us from repeating it again. The Meshech Chachma says, how could tshuva be a mitzvah? Why would I need a mitzvah of tshuva? The Torah said, don't eat basar b'chalav. So the guy ate once. He still can't do it again because the Torah still says, don't do it. So I need a mitzvah of tshuva to say, don't do it again? It's the first mitzvah that said, don't do it, that continues to say, don't do it. So I don't need a mitzvah of tshuva. It's just, the mitzvah of tshuva is, since anyway I have to stop, when I stop, I have to say vidoy. Amna mitzvah satshuva shalzet tzarch mitzvah pratis hu she'im chata v'oizev eschatay mitzvah lehisvadois ulahagid lefnei Hashem Yisbarach ki yoidea ba'atzmai shechata umevakish kapara. Now, we're saying anyway you would have to do charata also. Based on Rav Itzeleh, I would add that anyway I would have to do charata and recognize that what we did is foolish. But why doesn't the Rambam say, and when you do tshuva, you need to accept upon yourself not to do it again? And I believe the Meshech Chachma addresses this. He says, V'cheinu loshen rabbeinu b'hilchos tshuva kishayasa tshuva v'yashav mechetoi chayiv lehisvadois lefnei Hashem shem v'zados chatasam. Umashetzarach, that which we need, shabashazu yachshav, you need to think, Shelo yashav lekisla, that you're not going to return to your stumbling. V'lo yaver oid mitzvos b'Hashem. That's part of vidui. Now, based on what would anybody say that part of vidui is Kabbalah ala Asid? I think it's very simple. The Rambam, Nechos Teshuva, Perek Aleph, Halacha Aleph, when he talks about the function of vidui, he says, we read it, he says, V'tzarech lehizvadois b'sfasav v'loymar inyanim elu shagamar b'libai. Part of vidui is articulating your commitments. So Kabbalah ala Asid, in a way, is part of vidui. In that case, there's no mitzvah of tshuva. The mitzvah of tshuva is the first command that said don't violate in the first place. It's just if I do what I need to do, namely, I stop sinning, and I regret, when I do so, then I'm obligated to say vidui. Aval ala tshuva ba'atzma in l'chashel mitzvah chadasha. How could you consider tshuva a new mitzvah? Zulas hatzivuyim shekvar nitztava aleim, more than the original command that we're still commanded on. V'zehu baror, and this is clear. And therefore, when the Torah says that this mitzvah is not overseas, is not me'ever layam, in a way, tshuva is extremely difficult, because the prerequisite to tshuva is not easy. It is not. Nobody said it was easy to stop sinning. Nobody said it's easy to regret. But everybody agrees that you have to stop sinning unrelated to tshuva, and you need to regret unrelated to tshuva. Because the very same Torah that said don't do it continues to tell us don't do it. And once we do what we need to do, then in order to access the gift of tshuva, that is actually quite simple. It's beficha, it's in your mouth, vidui, uvavavcha, it's in your heart, Kabbalah al Asid, la'asoisoi. So Yibon Shem should give us siyata d'shmaya to fulfill the prerequisites of tshuva, to be yazoi v'rasha darkoi, and to have charata. And once we're able to do that, the rest of it, the Yibon Shem tells us, is something which is not difficult. Beficha uvavavcha la'asoisoi. And therefore the Rambam amazingly learns tshuva is not a mitzvah. Rav Zolti learns that the reason it's not a mitzvah is because it's a havtacha, that we will do tshuva. But the Meshech Chachma learns, and we're sort of expanding that based on Rav Itzeleh, the reason why it's not a mitzvah is because it always was a mitzvah. And that is the original command not to do it continues to say, don't do it again. Okay, Marv Rabbi Say, thanks for listening. Have a great day.
Rabbi?
Yes.
So
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.